Disney thinks it's safe after announcing it no longer is engaging in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Wrong.
So like nearly every institution in America following the election of Donald Trump, Disney announced this massive push away from its DEI policies. You'll remember up until 2025, Disney was among one of the wokest companies, if not the wokest company out there. So if you've never heard about DEI, here's a little crash course. It's a common phrase in corporate America, shorthand for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was created with the intention of allowing women and racial minorities a special forum to discuss internal issues within the company, and it quickly devolved into hiring and promoting people based solely on those immutable characteristics. And DEI manifested in Disney when the company began adding content advisory warnings on classic films like Dumbo and Peter Pan. The warnings told viewers that the film included, quote, negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. I mean, come on, that came across as incredibly woke, something that was likely written by a DEI specialist who came in and insisted that this was the perfect disclaimer to have. And at the same time, Disney was also outed for trying to add queer characters and adding LGBTQ identifying characters to kids' shows, which caused a lot of backlash from parents. Disney also added DEI standards as a consideration category for executives' compensation. And it received a lot of backlash for its 2021 program called Reimagine Tomorrow, which was designed to hire people based on immutable characteristics like race, sexual orientation, and gender, which is obviously illegal. Now, these policies were likely always illegal. You cannot, in the United States of America, discriminate in favor or against a particular group because of their race. But as the Trump administration actually enforces that ban, big companies are now publicly trying to distance themselves from these practices, including Disney. So in 2025, following Trump's inauguration, Disney made what seemed like a huge announcement that its DEI standards would be changing. And this was alongside plenty of other big companies announcing a shift away from these DEI policies. We saw this from Amazon, Target, Facebook, McDonald's, Walmart, Google, Deloitte. Those are just some of the notable examples. And this came after poor consumer sentiment as well. Disney was almost universally beloved, with probably some of the biggest complaints about the company being the price hikes and the wait times because their parks were so popular. But that sentiment quickly changed as people perceived the company to be not only political, but radically political in its stances. It was perceived that the company was more focused on appeasing woke adults than the young audience they were actually creating content for. So in 2025, Disney comes around, makes a U-turn, and says, yes, Dumbo and Peter Pan, they're still going to have content advisories, but they read much less woke. Now they say, this program is presented as originally created and may contain stereotypes or negative depictions. Another change they made is a Pixar show called Win or Lose, announcing it would no longer have a transgender identifying character. Instead, the show was going to have a Christian character who prays. This came alongside Disney leadership issuing a memo to employees that seemingly claimed that executives' compensation would no longer be focused on diversity and inclusion, but instead executives will receive raises based on merit. What a concept. And the biggest victory for the anti-woke crowd seemed to be the disintegration of that very controversial Reimagine Tomorrow program. So we should all be like, great, yeah, we're on our way, Disney's less woke. But I don't buy it for 1 second. The problem for Disney is that nearly every action taken to allegedly dismantle its DEI infrastructure looks more like a funeral for show than the actual butchering of these truly racist standards. For example, Disney stated in its big company-wide memo that we just talked about that it was rebranding an internal group. What was once called the Business Employee Resources Group is now going to be called the Belonging Employee Resource Group. Now, if you're lucky enough to be unfamiliar with DEI's core tenets, then this wouldn't read as anything suspicious to you. Great, Disney wants to make sure that everyone belongs and has adequate support from the community and the company. Great. But I've been around this nonsense for long enough to know that belonging is actually another common DEI buzzword. These DEI elites, or as I like to call them, race hustlers, whatever you want to call them, what they do is they hijack words to hide their insidious ideology. After all, what horrible person wouldn't want an employee to belong at Disney? But Power to Fly, a DEI consultant group, waxes poetically online about the importance of adding belonging to your existing DEI programs within the workforce. Their website reads, "What does diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging mean?" DEIB includes the belonging definition as part of an overall strategy to deepen inclusion and invite acknowledgement, acceptance, and authenticity for all in the workplace. Belonging is emotionally vital for friend groups, family, and especially at work. The strength of need can vary from person to person, but there is a near universal desire for individuals to feel genuinely welcome to participate, secure in their role, and connected to their colleagues. Adding the B to DEIB recognizes that a sense of belonging improves employees' personal feelings of positivity. Employees who aren't engaged, don't feel valued, or who are burnt out will not be as productive. Now, some of this is true. Some of it's just good corporate policies. But if you really read this, belonging in practice means people of certain races or genders have an opportunity to be heard. Not because they do or do not belong, but because of their race or gender. That's not getting rid of DEI. That's just rebranding it. Adding belonging to Disney's internal resources is very confusing if it's allegedly pushing away from DEI. And this isn't the only example I have of Disney attempting to pull wool over our eyes. Another change within the internal memo was an alleged shift back to merit-based assessment for employee compensation, as opposed to the diversity and inclusion standards that were already in place. Side note, that always really miffed me. Like, were people seriously getting raises because of their skin color? Anyway, many on the right, including myself, were initially very satisfied to hear that Disney was assessing employees based on merit, because I was just reading the headlines. And then when I read the actual memo, I realized the memo doesn't state that merit will be the cornerstone of advancement within the company. No, instead, what the company has done is they'd announced the creation of what they'd call talent strategy, which is, quote, an evolution of important concepts in the former diversity and inclusion strategy. The only thing they were changing about their policies is the name of them. So let me be clear, Disney is not changing, it's simply rebranding. It's merely evolving the outward appearance of existing problematic programs. And while Disney is obviously the ire of this video, it's very far from being the only organization rebranding its DEI policies. My least favorite university on planet Earth is also rebranding its DEI programs as well. The University of Michigan's School of Nursing rebranded its DEI office as the Office of Community Culture. Literally all they did was change the word diversity to community culture. The community culture links will take you to the exact same DEI materials. Literally all they did was change the name of it. And don't get me wrong, I would love to sit here and single out U of M all day, but they are far from the only university doing this. Very few of the universities that you are hearing about that are getting rid of DEI are actually getting rid of DEI programs. They're literally just rebranding them. And luckily, the Trump administration has figured out that DEI is like a wart. It's going to need multiple treatments before this is really fixed. The Department of Education announced an investigation into 52 universities, alleging that they've continued using DEI and race-based programs despite a mandate from the federal government to shut these programs down. Schools like Arizona State, Ohio State, Rutgers, Yale, Cornell, Duke, they're all under fire for using what is called the PhD Project, which is a nonprofit that increases diversity in business schools. So part of me loves that culture has shifted to the point where DEI isn't cool anymore, therefore it has to operate in the shadows. But at the same time, these faux changes only stand to make it harder to catch the wrongdoing of a company or a university and their insidious race-based policies. While it's no longer acceptable to put those standards out to the world, those standards may still operate quietly under the table. I understand that these companies and universities are less emboldened than they previously were, but we cannot claim victory until these programs are truly eradicated and not just rebranded. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you're a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, will you drop the mouse emoji? For obvious reasons. Thanks, friends. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment about how beautiful, intelligent, and funny I am. And if you want more content, click right over here for more videos and clips of my show. I'll see you back here next time. Bye!